Can you hear me? Welcome to the meeting this morning. Well, you're all very welcome. I will ask the Government Officer please to read the order of proceedings for the day and the foreign and domestic instructions. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Chair. Please ensure that you maintain social distance from all other persons in the chamber and in all the social areas. Please ensure that you wear a mask unless you are speaking or if you are unable to do so, and that you use hand sanitizer and wipes provided. Please maintain social distance at all times during the meeting and during any breaks. Please ensure that microphones are muted when you are not speaking and that you do not interrupt the other speaker. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open, i.e. other Teams chats, and that if you are contacted by a third party during an application, you should bring this to the legal advisor's attention, which is Mr. Dupre.
Good morning.
That if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Additionally, you'll be invited to speak and ask questions by the chair of the meeting, and we'll be using the e-voting for this meeting on modern.gov. The fire safety arrangements are as follows. If you hear the alarm, please leave the building immediately via the fire exit and make your way to the assembly point on Ipswich Town Football Ground training pitch. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits at each door at the end of the floor, and do not enter the atrium, the ground floor areas and the walkways. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs, not the lifts, and do not re-enter the building until you are told it's safe to do so. I'd now like to remind members, everyone present, that the meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will have been deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded, and by entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and for the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robert. May I make introductions? Ian Dupre, Legal Advisor. Stephen Stroud, the Strategic Projects and Delivery Manager, Planning. Robert Carmichael, our Governance Officer you've met, and the Case Officer, Samantha Summers. Can I move to the agenda, please? Yes, fine. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies of absence this morning from Councillor Adrian Osborne and Councillor Peter Beer, and I believe Councillor Jan Osborne is subbing for Councillor Adrian Osborne this morning.
Thank you. To receive declarations, pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest by members. Are there any to declare? Thank you. We move to confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of May. Are there any points of accuracy regarding the minutes? No, thank you. Could I have a proposer for the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Ayres. A seconder, please. Councillor McLaren, thank you. We now conduct an electronic vote, please, Robert.
Thank you, Chair. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to today's agenda and go to the plus sign in the top right-hand corner. If members could please go on the subsection on voting/attendance and then click on the light blue coloured vote that is currently in progress. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, so that is 9 votes for, with 1 abstention, so that is carried.
Thank you. To receive notifications, petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme. Over to you, Rob.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Site inspections. Before we begin the discussion on site visits, I would like to make an announcement from the Chair as regards them. I have seen a number of emails suggesting we carry out site visits on this particular planning application. I've also seen the advice from the Chief Planning Officer. This doesn't mean we should look to go on a committee site visit, but we should be very careful to ensure if we do, it's COVID secure. I therefore would like to suggest from the Chair that we hear the officers' presentations and the public speakers, and we would then be able to make sense of the issues and possibly consider a site visit or whether we've enough information by then. I would like to make a proposal to do that. Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Busby. Is that, you know, to take a vote?
Chair, we don't need to vote on that. So
don't need to vote. Are you all happy? Oh, that was easier than I thought. Okay. Moving on. Schedule of planning applications. Before we move into 6A, DC 20-03247, I would just like to confirm that Councillor McLaren is staying on the committee as well as being a ward member for one of the parishes present.
Chair, I'm staying on the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now invite the case officer, Samantha Summers, to introduce the application to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Before we start, I'd just like to draw your attention to the tabled papers. There were two tabled papers for this application. One was a representation from Woolverstone Parish Council, and the second is a change to the recommendation. Can I just check that all members have had the opportunity to have a look through the tabled papers before we start the meeting, please? Yeah, okay. So, good morning, everyone. This application comes to committee because it is a major development. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 22 dwellings, 2 of which are affordable dwellings, an extension to the Village Hall car park, a public open space, landscape enhancements, and cycleway links to the nearby villages of Holbrook and Chelmondiston. I have got quite a long presentation for you today. There's about 45 slides. So if something does, if you have any questions about a particular slide, if you wouldn't mind just making a note of the number so that we can click backwards and forwards quite quickly to answer any questions that you have, please. The application site extends over 4 different parishes and covers a large area. There are 5 separate small sites for housing. These are located on Main Road. The first site is here. The second site is just here. And the third site is here. And there are a further 2 sites on Harvstad Lane, which are down here. But all of the housing is within Woolverstone Parish, apart from Site 1, which is actually technically within Freston, but sits right on the boundary with Woolverstone and Freston. The cycleways cover all 4 parishes of Freston, Woolverstone, Chelmondiston and Holbrook. And they are these pink lines here that go down to Holbrook here, and a further one across here that extends to Chelmondiston. Freston Village is actually up here. So site number 1 is actually quite detached from Freston, and it reads better with Woolverstone Village, which is just here. We have Holbrook down here, and Chelmondiston over here in the east. This slide shows the proposal in context to the existing development of Woolverstone. So you can see the housing that is existing along here. And we have Site 1 just up here, Site 2, Site 3, Site 4 and Site 5. The green dotted line, which you may faintly be able to see just here, is the parish boundary between Freston and Woolverstone. The blue dotted line shows the proposed cycleways, which again are here and then down here to Chelmondiston. The links to the village of Holbrook and also links to sites 4 and 5, they propose cycleways as well, which are just here and up here. This slide shows the built-up area boundary of Woolverstone, which you can see is in several different parts, actually. There's one section here. There's this section north of Main Road, but there's also some just to the south of the Main Road just here as well. The red stars show the sites proposed for the housing. All of the sites are outside of the built-up area boundary. Woolverstone is classed as a hinterland village in policy CS2 of the core strategy, and therefore CS11 has been used to assess each site. It is important to remember that although each site has been assessed separately, this application is for the whole proposal, and therefore a split decision cannot be made on the application. As you can see from this plan, sites 1, 4 and 5, 1, 4 and 5, do not adjoin the built-up area boundary of Woolverstone. Site 2 sits opposite, and site 3 actually sits between two built-up area boundaries and also opposite it. Other than the built-up area boundary, there are several other constraints to the development. The Suffolk Coast and Heaths area of outstanding natural beauty lies to the north of Main Road, which is shown in green. Sites 2 and 3 are within the Woolverstone conservation area, and that is shown by the purple line. That extends into the area of outstanding natural beauty, but also to the housing development on the southern side of Main Road. Both the AONB team and the Heritage team have raised no objection to the scheme. There are listed buildings along Main Road. Home Farm sits on the opposite side of the road from sites 1 and 2, and shown with the blue star. There are also 2 listed buildings either side of site 3. We have Berners Hall, which is actually the village hall, and also the widows' houses just here. All of those listed buildings are grade 2 listed. Looking at each site in turn, this is site 1. The site is in the parish of Freston, which is actually classed as countryside in policy CS2, so they would need exceptional circumstances to actually allow housing in that area. Although it is in the parish of Freston, it does relate better to Woolverstone, and that is because the housing of Woolverstone finishes just here. There is a footpath along the main road that starts at these dwellings that neighbour the property, so the footpath starts here and runs all the way through the village of Woolverstone. Sometimes it crosses over the road, but then it crosses back again. The proposal for the site is for 3 pairs of semi-detached dwellings with garages, parking and gardens. The boundary of the rear gardens would be in line with the existing dwellings, and a landscaping belt is proposed between an existing farm track and the development. This is the house design for site number 1. They're 3-bedroomed houses and have a very traditional style to the front, and it's a little bit more contemporary to the rear of the buildings. I have used Google Images for all of the site photographs. It's the easiest way to explain the sites. One, because you can see it in context with the built-up area boundaries and the development that's around Woolverstone. But also, there's quite high hedges in front of most of the sites. So actually getting anything that is relatable for you to understand the sites was quite difficult. And actually using Google Street View, because the camera is mounted on top of a car, you can see over the hedges in most cases. So hopefully you'll find that quite useful. This slide shows the site, which is this area just here between the farm track and the existing houses. So the boundary would run along here. It is on the edge of the development along Main Road. There is currently a hedgerow in front of the road that is to be retained. Clearly, any hedging that is in visibility space for all of the sites will be moved back, so it will be taken out but replanted. The Grade 2 listed dwelling of Home Farm is opposite the site just here. So this is the last property, actually in Main Road in Woolverstone, and this is the site just along here. As you can see, this is where the footpath into the village actually starts. This is looking back towards Woolverstone village with that first dwelling just here, and this was the garaging that you could see with the footpath in front of it. Moving on to site 2, this would comprise of 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings. A landscaping buffer is also proposed along the boundaries. This is the house type, very similar in design to the previous dwellings from site 1. They are smaller dwellings, which have 2 bedrooms, and they have a slightly smaller, slightly smaller ground floor area. Oh yeah, sorry. So there's actually 2 different house types on site 2. They're both 2 bedrooms. One has, this is the larger floor area that you can see just here. And then the other pair is the same design house, but with this area missing. So it's a slightly smaller house. The larger houses do have garaging. The smaller houses have just open parking bays to the rear. Site 2 would be located just here in front of these reservoirs. Extensive landscaping has already taken place around the reservoir area, which you can see in this area here. Further landscaping is proposed between the farm track and the site. The built-up area boundary is on the opposite side of the road, just here, and contains those dwellings along the road. The listed home farm is just here. This is the application site in front of the banking for the reservoirs. So the houses would sit in front of this area here. The existing hedge is to be retained, again with replanting of any hedgerow that's removed to make way for the visibility space. The footpath into the village is on the opposite side of the road in this part of the village. And this is looking in the other direction, so the site is here, with the footpath running into the village along this opposite side of the road. This is site 3. This is the site is the most central in terms of location within the village. The site sits between two Grade 2 listed buildings, Berners Hall to the west, and the Widows' houses to the east of the site. So Village Hall here and the Widows' houses here. The site includes an extension to the car park of Berners Hall, which is the Village Hall, and that is proposed just here. And a public open space is also provided just here. Two pairs of semi-detached bungalows are proposed in this location here. 20 formal parking spaces are proposed with parking for the overflow car park, and also further parking would be available in the grassed area just here if necessary. 4 formal parking spaces are provided actually in the existing car parking area with a disabled space also. The existing access would be used for all of the parking on this site. Looking at a bit more detail of the actual dwellings that are proposed, you can see them just here. They have a link through the open space to the Village Hall, and this is the widows' houses that are Grade 2 listed just here. There are no garages proposed for these dwellings, but there are parking spaces available in this area, and there's also some outdoor buildings, sheds if you like, provided for secure bicycle storage. Each pair of the semis comprise a small 1-bedroom unit and a 2-bedroom unit. They are traditional in style as well, and are subservient to the widows' houses adjacent to the site in design and scale. Heritage have raised no objection to the scheme. This is site 3 in this area here. The car park extension would be just here, open space here, and the proposed dwellings in this area. The site sits between 2 built-up area boundaries, the finisher Berners Hall and widows' houses, and extend along there and along here. This is Berners Hall with the existing access to the car park just here. The footpath through the village runs along the front of the site here. This is just moving down the site a bit, so this is the access to Berners Hall with the application site in this part of the field here. So this would be the area for car parking, open space, and then further up towards widows' houses would be the housing development. So this is where the bungalows are proposed, and you can just see the outline of widows' houses just here. These are the Grade 2 listed widows' houses adjacent to site number 3. Moving on to sites 4 and 5 in Harvstad Lane. These 2 sites are not considered to be well located to access facilities in Woolverstone. Harvstad Lane is a single track road with informal passing places. There is no safe haven for pedestrians because of hedgerows, and also there is banking along the road. These 2 sites are considered to be contrary to the development plan. This is site 4. It proposes 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings, all with garaging. A landscape buffer is to be provided to the north of the site, just here. And this is a bit confusing because it's orientated slightly differently, so north is up here in this direction. Again, very traditional looking houses. The dwellings would have 3 bedrooms. It should be noted that Woolverstone is quite a rare example of an estate village which is associated with Woolverstone Hall. So this is why all of the dwellings that have come forward have been proposed in a nice red brick and quality materials, but also have that very traditional styling so that it would fit in with the street scene. So this slightly different coloured green here is the application site for Site 4. The site is just north of a small cluster of dwellings that you can just see here. And there is a public footpath that exists along this field up into Woolverstone itself. This is one of the locations for one of the cycleways, which would run along the rear of these buildings here, pop out at the bottom of the road here, cross over into the applicant's field, run along here south to site number 5, linking all of the sites together. This is Harvstad Lane, and the site is just on the left-hand side here. Again, you can see that it's a slightly different colour because it's not actually farmed currently. It's quite an awkward shape to get the machinery into, I suspect. The proposed dwellings would sit forward of these overhead cables that you can see just here. There is an area of landscaping proposed in this area, with the houses tucked behind, adjacent to the existing dwellings in Harvstad Lane. This is looking back towards the village, and the application site is on the right-hand side here, behind this hedgerow. These are some of the dwellings in the small cluster to the south of the site. There is wide spacing between these dwellings. The photographs are taken from the same spot, one looking towards the village, north, and the other one looking south. This is Site 5, and this is the one that is at the southern end of Harvstad Lane. Again, it's proposing to have 2 pairs of semi-detached properties with garaging for each dwelling. This is the same house type as for site number 4, which ties the 2 sites together. And again, they're 3-bedroom dwellings. This is site number 5 in this area here, and sits between 2 clusters of existing development. This one here, and then this one on the corner of Harvstad Lane just here. Again, you can see the narrowness of Harvstad Lane, and the application site is on the left-hand side here. This is just a photograph of the cluster at the southern end of site number 5 on the corner of the road. This is some plans of the proposed garaging for the dwellings. And this is the proposed garden stores for plot number 3. As you can see, both the garaging and the garden sheds, they are all quite traditional in their styling and materials that are used. This slide shows the street scenes. The top 3 slides are of Site 3, which sits between the widows' houses and Burners Hall. And it just shows the scale of the houses in context with widows' houses. Then we move on to site number 1, which is the one that is technically in Freston. That is the last house in the village, and then the houses would extend out towards Freston. And then this site down here is the one that sits in front of the reservoir, so site number 2. So you can see that the houses are all well spaced, which is a feature of the houses actually in the village, the estate houses that are associated with Woolverstone Hall. This plan shows the landscaping and biodiversity enhancement that are also included within the scheme. The green blotches are the new landscaping areas around the sites that you can see here. 2 CGIs have been provided just to give you an idea of how the sites might look if they were developed. This one is site number 1, which is the one in Freston. So these are the proposed houses just here, with the existing development along here. And then this second one is of site 2, which sits in front of the reservoirs. There have been no objections from consultees, apart from some concerns about the public rights of way. The concerns relate to the cycleways, which in some cases actually run alongside some public footpaths. The blue arrows show the public footpaths on here, so the cycle link between Woolverstone and Chelmondiston, there is a public right-of-way that runs along the field edge. There's this one that links site 4 to Woolverstone Centre. That is a public right-of-way. There is also one along here, which is on the cycleway proposed to Holbrook, and another section along here. The applicant has confirmed that the cycleways will form a separate route alongside the footpaths, rather than sharing a surface with the public right-of-way. Details of the cycleways, including their routes and surfaces, will be required by condition should members be minded to approve the scheme. Cycleways would be subject to a Section 106 agreement to ensure that they are available at all times for everyone. The affordable dwellings have been offered by the scheme. This is clearly not 35% of the 22 dwellings as required by policy. However, a viability assessment was carried out by the applicant. This has been to the district valuer for consultation, who concluded that the scheme was only just viable with no affordable housing. Therefore, the offer of 2 affordable units was generous in his opinion. A full local needs assessment did not accompany the application, but details of the parish survey from 2016 was used to inform the type of dwellings for this scheme. Members should be minded that this is only, well, it's quite old information now, but also it's what people wanted or may want, not actually a proper needs assessment. The mix of dwellings on offer are 1, 2 and 3 bedroom dwellings, and 4 of those are bungalows. These are the type of dwellings that were shown up as being something that villagers may want in the future for the village. It's also the type of housing that Babergh does have a district-wide need for, particularly the single-storey dwellings, where people would be able to downsize but remain in the village. I think it's particularly important to remember that small villages don't often have the opportunity to have smaller single-storey dwellings. It enables people to downsize that already live in the village and may have either family or friend connections that enhance their life. Villages often have very limited housing stock that don't include this type of housing. Okay, that was the last slide. The scheme is not policy compliant. However, the public benefits on offer are considered to make a strong case for the proposal. Woolverstone has very little in the way of facilities and amenities. There is the village hall, the church, yacht club and private school. Day-to-day amenities can be found in the nearby villages of Chelmondiston and Holbrook. Chelmondiston is also classed as a hinterland village, whereas Holbrook is actually a core village, so has more facilities on offer for people. Both of these villages have shops, schools, public houses, clubs, and Holbrook also has a doctor's surgery. Linking Woolverstone by cycleways to these two villages is a benefit to existing residents as well as to any future residents. 2 affordable units are proposed. Additional car parking for the village hall, where parking can be quite difficult along Main Road. It's quite a busy route. Some public open space is provided in the centre of the village, which is linked with the village hall and could be utilised for village functions. Enhanced landscaping and biodiversity enhancements are also included in this application. It is for members to decide whether these public benefits outweigh the harm created by the 22 dwellings in the countryside. The application is recommended for approval as set out in your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Are there any questions for the officer? Lee, please. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Sam. That was a great presentation. Just a couple of points. Firstly, I'm assuming the footpath is not going to be extended towards Site 1. And the other thing, the parking condition, does that include the electrical charging points and the secure cycle sheds that I think Highways wanted to be put in?
Yes. Yeah, there is secure cycle storage for the dwellings, either in the sheds or in the garaging. So that has already been addressed. Electric car charging points, that may be something that the agent would be able to clarify for you, what type of charging points they would be, etc.
And the footpath is not being extended?
I don't think the footpath is to be extended for Site 1, no.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Councillor Lee Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Sam, I wonder if you could just clarify for me. Woolverstone is currently designated as a hinterland village, but in the table papers, the parish council contend that they shouldn't be a hinterland village, and that in fact in the forthcoming joint local plan the designation is changed to hamlet. Now, I haven't actually checked that myself, I'm taking that at face value, but assuming that that is the case, to what extent is the forthcoming JLP material, and if it were the case, would that have any influence on the recommendation now?
Thank you. Yes, so at the moment it is classed as hinterland village. You are correct, because of the lack of facilities, it will be downgraded to a hamlet in the forthcoming joint local plan. However, we're still at early stages with that at the moment, so we're giving that document limited weight. Our decision today is based on our current policies.
Councillor Jane Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you, Sam. I have several questions, but they'll only be relevant in the event that we proceed with making a decision today rather than going for a site visit. However, could you go back to slide 30, please? Yeah, that one, yeah. There were several actually that. That one. Is that the only access road? And is it one-way traffic down there? It looks very narrow to me. So is that the only access road in and out of that particular site, which I think was going to be Site 4 and possibly Site 5?
Yes, so Sites 4 and 5 will be accessed from Harvstad Lane. That is the only access point. It is a single track lane.
Right, thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sam, for that presentation. Could you give me the distances of the footpaths? So the distance from Woolverstone to Holbrook. Do we know, so, not the footpaths, the cycle paths, sorry, the distances between the two and the distance between Woolverstone and Chelmondiston on that cycle path? Do we have that, or am I asking something? Sorry.
Yeah, we do have that information. It will take me a few minutes just to,
Okay,
because there's so many plans, unless, of course, this can wait for the agent who will probably have that information to hand. Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Any more questions for Otter? Councillor Barrett?
Can you, Sam, thank you. Can you say how many and what the capacity of the car park is currently?
Yes, at the moment, for the village hall,
Yes.
yeah, it's very informal, so it's quite a small space actually. The proposed plan is showing that there's 4 and a disabled space. That's probably quite realistic, I would assume, in order to get turning heads to get in and out of there, because it's quite narrow access. So not many is the answer.
Councillor Busby?
Yes, I can confirm it is very small because I tried to turn my car around in it yesterday. It wasn't easy. On the same point, I think it's slide 17, I think you mentioned that the hall entrance was remaining. I could have sworn I've read somewhere that it was going to be doubled in size to allow cars to come into the hall rather than have to queue on the road. Was I dreaming, or was that?
I'm not too sure on that point, but again, the agent can probably clarify that point for you. Yeah.
Just follow up a little bit more on the public space, Sam. Do you know if that is just going to be left as green space, or is it a sports field, or anything more concrete?
I think at this stage it's just going to be a green space with some landscaping along the rear boundary. I think probably it will be up to the parish if they decide that they want any play equipment or anything like that on there, that they would be able to use SIL payments in order to pay for any of those facilities.
Any more questions for the officer? No? Thank you very much, Sam, for a comprehensive report. We're now moving on to public speakers. As the application crosses 4 parish boundaries, all 4 of the parishes have been invited to speak at this meeting. I will now ask the representative of Woolverstone Parish Council to address us. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. This application seeks to find a way around planning restrictions for building in the countryside, in our view. It is a conjuring trick with the cycle paths acting as the glamorous assistant to take your eyes off what is really happening here. That is building 22 houses in open countryside in a protected landscape and impacting on our heritage assets. In pre-application, the developer was advised they would have to demonstrate exceptional circumstances and a proven justifiable need. Neither has been provided. Throughout, Woolverstone has been incorrectly identified as a hinterland village by policy CS2. A clerical error identified it as such and has been rectified in the emerging EJLP. To continue designating it as such would be irrational. Woolverstone is a hamlet and appropriate policies should apply. A 21% growth is not appropriate for the size or character of our village. The Listed Buildings Act states there should be special regard to the desirability of preserving the building or its setting. The Heritage Department provided no analysis or assessment of impact. Listed buildings are not even mentioned by name and dismissed in a single sentence. Building between the Widows' Homes and Berners Hall will harm its setting, its connection with the estate, and the experience of our rural past will be irretrievably spoilt. The recommendation for approval is based on public benefits outweighing the less than substantial harm of this development. There is no evidence of clear analysis of this balance, Who exactly are the beneficiaries? The car park. No evidence is offered to show a need for a bigger car park. It is just planted there. The Berners Hall Management Committee were not asked for a formal position. The open space. Residents don't want it. They're surrounded with quality open space. Cycle paths. Shotley Peninsula Cycling Campaign object to the proposal because the cycle paths are disconnected. The idea that there will be a modal shift is simply smoke and mirrors. The garage car park spaces shows the reality. Another 44 cars on the village roads. The village survey is 5 years old. Since then, 15 houses have already been built in Woolverstone. This is cherry picking to suit the developer's purpose to talk about the size of properties rather than the number, which was very clearly between 5 and 10. This application is beguiling. I urge you to see it for what it is, an attempt to gain planning permission where it wouldn't normally be granted. This application runs contrary to both Babergh's development plan and the emerging JLP. The planning officer's report, point 12.1, shared with the committee, is incorrect. Matters raised by the Woolverstone Parish Council have not been addressed, and I urge you to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are you prepared to take questions?
Yes, yeah.
Any questions for Woolverstone Parish Council? No? Then I thank you, sir. Moving on. There is no representatives from Chelmondiston and there are no representatives from Freston. They've declined to attend today. I would now ask the objector, Stevie Kent, to speak. You have 3 minutes to address the committee.
We have a growing problem with the volume of traffic through Woolverstone. Noise, speeding, pollution and severance are increasingly issues for residents. The transport assessment does not include the cumulative impact of other planning commitments in the area, e.g. the additional flow of over 1,000 vehicles a day from the development of HMS Ganges. The transport assessment does not reflect the true figures for vehicle flow on the B1456, as it was carried out during the school holiday. SCC does not consider the site sustainable from a transport policy perspective. Much is made of the cycle paths. These are not joined up, leaving the dangerous narrow stretch through the centre of the village. Being permissive, they do not address the long-term designation. No evidence has been put forward to show a need for them, no survey, no assessment. Shotley Peninsula Cycling Campaign Group have objected to the proposals. Site by site. Site 1, the historic entrance to the village and marks the start of the conservation area. Entering from Ipswich, the agent's house is on the left and number 1 is on the right, with the beautiful gable end with decorative barge boards. The historic presence and context will be lost. Site 3, the space between the widows' homes and Berners Hall has existed for 130 years. It is at the heart of the open spaces that are the essence of the village of Woolverstone and will be altered considerably and the significance of the widows' homes diminished. Site 4, the Heritage Report noticed buildings were rather large. We say 2-storey houses built in isolated, flat, open countryside with no woodland to soften impact will harm the views across our unique, ancient estate landscape of fields and woods towards Holbrook. Site 5, this wooded paddock in the open countryside is haven for deer, moving from one wood to another, bats, owls, woodpecker, and even nightingales. This pepper pot approach to development is a danger to the open countryside and will lead to more building on greenfield sites in rural areas and the destruction of their rural nature. Babergh policies are designed to protect these areas and should not be circumvented. There are no exceptional circumstances for building here. There is no proven justified local need. As the council has 35% more properties approved than is required, there's no pressure to approve an application that does not comply with the development plan or BDC policies. This application should be rejected.
Thank you. Are you prepared to answer questions if there are any?
Yes.
Any questions for the Speaker? Yes, Councillor. Councillor Ali.
Hiya. Buses. How many times do the buses run through the villages?
We used them yesterday 4, I believe. Can I?
5, and there's no bus service on a Sunday. And they stop at 6 o'clock in the evening, so you can't get back on a bus service which will go into town in the evening.
And have you had much communication with the agent?
We had communication with the agent at the very beginning of the process. He came to talk to us about what was happening. We had a village meeting so plans could be presented, but in fact only a map was presented which showed the possible sites. It wasn't until the application went live in August that we actually saw what was proposed on the for the application. There were a couple of communications in the meantime. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Hinton.
Oh, well, yep, still there. A quick one concerning healthcare as much as anything else. I presume that the residents of existing residents of Woolverstone use Holbrook or Shotley surgeries. They're linked, but
Yes, people choose that we're sort of equidistant for both.
so presumably access has to be by car because there's no convenient bus service, and
Oh,
if you're sick, you're not going to get on your bicycle.
Absolutely, and if you're ill, you wouldn't get on the bike.
And as far as children's education is concerned?
Children have to go either by car or school bus.
To where?
Some choose to go to Chelmondiston Primary, some to Holbrook. There aren't school buses to Chelmo, though, are there? To the primary schools. It's high school I was thinking of, sorry, when I said school bus.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ayres.
Thank you, Chair. You said that the survey of the traffic was during the school holidays. How significant is the difference? Because you do have a lot of cars going to the high school?
It's huge, yes. The Ipswich High School has originally, they planned to bring a lot of children out by coach, but many have opted to be transported privately. It's also the number of developments that have been in the meantime in Chelmondiston and Shotley, so we have all that traffic passing through, taking children to school or wherever they're going, yes.
Thank you.
I mean, it's a real problem for our elderly just across the road at the moment. We have very elderly neighbours on both sides, and they really struggle. We go with them to the library van, one of them, to help her to cross the road.
Any more questions? If not, we're going to have a look. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chair, this was actually probably to the parish council. But I guess you both could answer it. The hall, what use is made of the hall? Is it just local or are other people hire it?
It's used very little. I can't think of more than 4 or 5 occasions in a year when you'd be talking about needing to use an overflow car park. And Jeff Mayhew very kindly lets us use his beat patch, which is next door to the village hall, if we need to do that. But you'll be talking about 4 or 5 times a year. I think the actual capacity of the car park is closer to 6 or 7 cars rather than the 4 referred to. But yeah, normally it's more small clubs, small meetings.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you. I believe we now have to take a little break while we swap the speakers round. Please don't disappear. Thank you. We can resume again. We don't have a supporter, so I will now ask the applicants to speak. We have Roger Barmer and Alistair Davison, I believe. And can I ask you to stay afterwards and answer the questions that you agreed to answer for the council? Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, members. My name is Roger Barmer and I head up a small design team in East Bergholt. Our clients are third and fourth generation farmers in Woolverstone who live both in and close to the village. This project has taken 3 years of consultation and planning to eventually come before you today. It is a truly unique and complex proposal in which we have sensitively woven a definable layer of development and landscaping into the grain of this historic village. We've undertaken a detailed process to ensure that the proposal is well considered and appropriate. This has been a design-led exercise driven by our client's desire to create the best realistic fit for the village as a whole, rather than purely a monetary return based upon a financial matrix. This is far from that. We consider that our consultation with experts in their field has provided us with an excellent platform from which to propose this mix of housing, its location, scale, and the character of the architecture. With the considered landscape and biodiversity proposals and the many sustainable qualities, together with the significant public benefits that are integral to this project, we believe that this scheme delivers a wholesome and realistic proposal for Woolverstone that will help thwart disparate piecemeal development within this high-quality village for the foreseeable future. We've been through a process of deep scrutiny to address the many constraints that come into play, including the effect on the conservation area, the adjacent listed buildings, and not least the AONB. We've sought to balance the impact of the development with the unusual opportunity to offer very tangible public benefits. The connectivity provided by the new cycle path links to Holbrook and Chelmondiston is extraordinary. The much needed additional parking and access improvements for the village hall and the adjacent public open space are positive benefits. The provision of affordable houses, the small bungalows is very much meeting a local need. The overall mix of bungalows, cottages and houses of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom semi-detached units is a response to the sensitivity of this project. I am pleased that this application comes before you today with no objection from the vast majority, if not all, of the professional consultees. I am fully aware of the significance of this project and I'm proud of the proposal which is before you. I cannot do the details of this expansive process and the resultant scheme true justice within my lot of 3 minutes here. However, I'd be really pleased to answer any questions and to talk through some of the perhaps more tricky issues with you. Thank you for your time.
Councillor McLaren, do you want to start with your question that the agent agreed to answer?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Barmer. Could you give me the distances, the question I asked before, could you give me the distances of the footpath, I will say the footpaths, the cycle paths between the Holbrook and Woolverstone and Chelmondiston and Woolverstone?
I can answer that one. Between Woolverstone Hall, where it starts to just short of Chelmondiston, is about 0.75 of a mile, 1.22 kilometres. Okay. And from just adjacent to Berners Hall through to the beginning of Holbrook is 1.67 miles or 2.6 kilometres.
Okay. So can I then follow that up with another question? When these cycle paths were envisaged and planned, who or what part of the population did you think might use them?
Sorry. Certainly we would expect both villagers at either end to use the pass to get to Woolverstone and to get from Holbrook to Chelmondiston through Woolverstone. We can't connect much has been made in this process of the lack of connectivity in the centre of the village. We simply can't do that. We can offer the provision on the land that we have available, and there is a short section of road which needs to be used. At the moment, all of the road needs to be used. Similarly, for people to get to the core village of Holbrook from Chelmondiston, or indeed from Woolverstone to Holbrook, will be significantly improved. I've travelled the road for 15 years daily on school trips with the children. I know the bends as you come round from the water tower, and they are a nightmare. And this takes out that provides an opportunity to get rid of that real problem which exists. I see that as a really key part of this. Also tourism. I think that the tourism in the district is obviously increasing, and the fact that people will be able to circumnavigate the peninsula without using the roads has to be a good thing. I'm aware of other projects where the cycle path network is currently being considered, and this is possibly the start of a really progressive change where the cycling within the district is improved. And I'm aware of your own consultation, which is taking place at the moment with regards to the use of cycle paths and such like.
Can I just make a comment on that? Holbrook is my ward, it's part of my ward. Just an observation, if this business about people in Woolverstone using Holbrook safe for the surgery and perhaps the co-op. In fact, for those sort of journeys, I doubt very much that the majority of people would use a bicycle. They would use a car, wouldn't they?
For the doctor's surgery, for sure. But children to the shops, families to the shops, to the school, there are many services in Holbrook which would definitely attract attention from the cycle path and make it a very useful proposition.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There was one other question that someone wanted answered by the agent. Councillor Busby, quickly there.
Yeah, it was the question about the entrance to the hall. I'm sure I read somewhere where it was going to be expanded so that you could have an in-out. Was that?
We see that as a definite plus to the scheme at the moment. Perhaps part of the reason why the hall isn't used as much as it could be is because it isn't very accessible. And that could be partly the car parking and the provision for functions there. The actual access itself is due to be doubled so that 2 cars can drive in and out at the same time. At the moment, it's single track. It's a nightmare. You have to reverse back onto the road or back into the car park. So, yeah.
Another one as well. Again, I can't remember where it's read. The trouble with reading the reports and also looking at all the documents online, you never know around which way you've got them. It is better, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry. Again, I think there was mention of passing bays being put onto Harvstad Lane.
Yes, you're correct. The situation in Parkstead Lane is that for most of the distance, it is currently single track, and it is difficult to pass. As part of our proposal, the new entrances to the 2 sites on Harvstad Lane are extraordinarily wide, in the true sense of the word, to what they actually need to be for those sizes of developments. And that has been incorporated specifically to enable people to pass and use those entrances for passing. And then there is an additional passing place as well, which is proposed. So there'll be 3 passing places created as a direct result of what we're doing.
Councillor Parker, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, to an extent, Councillor McLaren covered it actually, but I will just challenge Mr. Balmer if I can. I noted that you made mention 3 times in your presentation about public benefit, and yet Woolverstone claim that there is none. So, aside from the cycle paths, what is the public benefit that should persuade us to to go against a lot of what is in our existing core strategy?
That's a good question. So, of course, there are the cycle paths. There are also. I'm just trying to think if there are actually any changes to the footpaths themselves.
Yes, yeah.
There are.
Yeah, there's a section of footpath currently opposite Home Farm on the maps that's 450 mil or so wide. It's not really a path, and as part of what we are proposing, that path gets widened to 1.2 metres to allow prams and such like to get through the village along the actual footpath rather than needing to stray onto the verge or onto the road.
Yes, that's opposite Home Farm. I should also just point out one thing which didn't necessarily come across quite clear earlier. The Site 1 is connected via a footpath to the village. It isn't a remote site, that we are able to connect onto the existing footpath that you saw on one of the early slides. So the other, Councillor Parker, coming back to your question there, the other public benefits, as I see them, and this is off the top of my head, there's clearly the car park. We go from 4, 5, maybe 6 spaces to 20 plus a good 10 to bring the village hall fully into use and fully safe. We widen the width of the entrance, as I've just explained to Councillor Busby. There is the public open space. We have discussed with the village whether they would like children's play equipment incorporated as part of that, and that was something which was not seen as something which would be attractive or desirable. And indeed, with regards to the increasing of the size of the car park, comments were made that it would only increase antisocial behaviour, which it is difficult to sort of accept. There are landscape benefits included within the proposal as well, quite significant biodiversity and many sustainable issues.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. My first question has been answered on the single track because I did have concerns about that. So, it's been referred to on several occasions by both the planning officer and one of the objectors that development would only be approved under exceptional circumstances. Yes. I would find it very helpful if you could explain to me why you feel that there are exceptional circumstances to these 5 sites, please.
Yeah, that's fine. To me, it's really clear. The public benefits which we've just discussed, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to provide a cycle path and the connectivity between the villages, which will not happen again. And given the mix of housing which is proposed, right on the money with what we are all looking to do in providing the smaller units, there is a need for it. There's no question about that. It's for you to decide whether Woolverstone is the right place for it. But it's, you know, the bungalows, the semi-detached, the smaller units, the downsizing to free up the larger units so we don't have to keep building the larger units. All of that carries, in my mind, strong muster. And the opportunity to weave that in to a scheme which gets this significant benefit and I would say exceptional circumstance of being able to connect over nearly 3 miles of the peninsula is compelling.
And another question is, will you be picking up any of the schemes that are currently in place for specifically on the smaller homes for key workers, for first-time buyer key workers?
No, I can't say that is something which is being considered. No, I can't say it has, no.
Thank you. Yes. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. Morning. On the design statement, you say you're incorporating a lot of sustainable design features, but looking at these, a lot of them sound aspirational rather than commitments. Like, for example, you're saying you're considering thermal bridging rather than eliminating it. You're doing well-proportioned double-glazed windows rather than high performance, and you're considering embodied energy rather than minimising it. And I just wonder if these are commitments or just aspirations, as I say, and if they're on every property. And also, as I asked the officer, are you including electrical charging points in the premises soon?
Thank you. The electric charging points are proposed for each house. It is our intention, and the design of the units have been conceived to incorporate all of the benefits which are indicated on the list in the design statement. If the wording isn't quite correct, it is a commitment which I can make now that we would definitely, this isn't just speech. It's thorough and proper. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Owen?
Sorry. I'm going to ask the same question as I asked the parishes. You've been doing this for 3 years. How many times did you meet with the parishes in these 3 years?
I would need to check my notes to give an absolutely factual answer, and I believe the parish's response was accurate in terms of their written response, in terms of the chronology of events. There was an initial meeting which set out the parameters of what we were looking to achieve through the scheme. There was subsequently a public meeting from which there was a SWOT analysis and a good number of emails which were exchanged and forwarded to me. Simon was very cooperative with that. And the SWOT analysis was really key for us to make sure that we were hitting the mark as much as we could, run parallel with the survey of 2016 with the offering that we were to put forward. And as many of those items which came out of that have been incorporated. There was then a subsequent meeting with the, certainly with the Village Hall Committee.
It was with an informal meeting with one member without prejudice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Barrett first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. You've answered quite a few questions about the design and the sustainability. I just wondered also on the heritage aspects of the appearance, the exteriors, because this village is got quite a unique identity, really, and I believe that what's called for is very highest standard of appearance to conform with that. Can you sort of describe a little bit more? We've not been able to see from those drawings, they're not detailed enough for us to appreciate what might be included in your design.
That's a great question, thank you. So the design, there's a huge amount of thought which has gone into it. Conversations with the heritage officer and design officer at the council to make sure that we're all aligned in what we think is the right response, design response. The use of red brick is synonymous with Woolverstone. It's what's there. Similarly, the use of peg tiles on the roofs. We've sought to make sure it's been really clear, and we've been in agreement from the onset, that it's very important that this is a readable layer of development, not something which is mishmash and ad hoc to just fit in with the next door house. We should see this as a definable, yes, layer is the word, of what happened in between 2021 and 2025, in exactly the same way as the phase which the burners created 140 odd years ago is very, very tangible within the existing arrangement. We've sought to put a few elements of contemporary architecture within. that essential palette of the peg tiles and the brickwork. And if you're able to look at the drawings at some point, there is a detailed elevation which shows some clever brickwork. The windows are slightly recessed. The windows are powder-coated aluminium. The detailing on the parapets down the side and the chimneys themselves is all in zinc. We haven't held back, and we haven't been asked to hold back. And it's important to say that there's 500,000 pounds worth of public benefits, plus the seal money, which is incorporated into this. And when that is aligned with the cost of the high quality architecture and the landscaping which we're proposing, that is the reason why there are no more affordable units than what there are. And Sam made reference in the earlier presentation to the fact that the Tony Williams' response to our viability assessment, sorry, I was getting my words right, was that it was barely viable with no affordable units. And we've taken the view that it's important, and it is another public, it's another benefit which comes out of this. We've seen it as important to incorporate some. So we've put two units. The 2 units on site 2, which don't have a garage, are proposed to be the affordable units. We were really concerned that we wouldn't get any providers to buy into just 2 isolated units in the countryside, but we've spoken to Hasto, and they are willing to take those on, one as a rentable property and the other as a shared ownership.
Please, Albert. You know how to go.
Could I ask, you said that you hoped that people would downsize so it would make the larger houses more available. In your design, are they homes for life? Because if some of them who are downsizing may be elderly, how are what facilities have you got? Would any have a wet room, or have they got wide doorways in case they end up in a wheelchair?
Sorry.
Although not specifically complying with Homes for Life, the 1 and the 2 bedroom bungalows both incorporate, they have wet rooms on the ground floor. They have wider doorways, I think also the affordable homes have quite specific requirements on spaces around rooms and turning circles and all various things. So those 6 units would all be suitable for downsizers or less mobile people. Yeah.
Councillor McLaren, would you back up?
Yes, Chair. Can I just check with Ian? When Sam gave her presentation, there was you alluded to the low level of affordable housing that was within this application. Is that all right for me to continue to ask a question in that vein?
Of course, yes, of course.
Thank you, Chair. When people apply to develop different areas, there has been a rule that affordable housing, anything over a certain number, then affordable housing applies. I think it's over 10. Can you just explain to me why your application is actually for 22 houses? It's come in as one application. Can you explain to me why there is only 2 houses that have been allocated for affordable housing, when actually Shotley Peninsula actually needs affordable housing? Thank you.
So that's a very good question again. The cost of this as a project it would be appropriate at some point, if I can, to explain why we're doing this. What's the rationale behind it? What is it about? What's the driver? But perhaps I can come on to that. the cost of this as a project to deliver the benefits and the high quality architecture to the level which we believe it needs to be in the heritage and conservation setting to get this really right and appropriate in terms of the design, but also the package as a whole, so that we feel that it hits a sensible balance, has led us to 22 units and the 2 affordables. It's the viability assessment which has told us that at 22 units it's barely viable with no affordable units incorporated. So to help with the balancing and the benefits, we've put 2 in because we feel it's important as part of the package as a whole. Those 2 units come at a cost of about £142,000. The cycle path is £235,000. The car park is about £39,500.
Excuse me, I don't think we need to.
Fine.
The steps. I think you answered your question. Yeah, answered your question. Thank you. You're going too much steps. Any more questions for the agent? No, then I'll thank you very much. I'll ask you to stand down. And now, I'm moving into debate, is that correct? Thank you. It is customary, if a ward member is here and has not spoken as a ward member, that you are invited to open the debate. You do not have to accept that invitation, by the way, but the invitation is there for you to start the debate. Okay, thank you. Yeah, would anybody else like to start the debate? Councillor Parker.
Super job. I'll kick off then, Chair. Gosh, it really is a finely balanced application, in my opinion, and I'll be glad to hear the considerations of my colleagues. But I just sat and drew a thoroughly informal pros and cons table to sit here, and as I was sitting here, sort of thing. And I've got some serious reservations, I have to say. I'm a big fan of Mr. Barmer's work ordinarily, and I don't think that this application itself is objectionable. It's quite an attractive scheme, I think. But there are some serious considerations insofar as it is against policy in the whole, or in the main. So that's a serious consideration for us to, because what's the point of having a policy if we don't adhere to it? Affordability is a major issue for me, Chair, as well. I fully accept what the applicant is saying, but nonetheless, there is an obligation to provide a certain amount of affordability, and it is regretful that, that the applicant feels that this scheme would be unviable, but that's something that we're going to have to take into account, isn't it? I mean, the rules are the rules. There should be, what, nearly eight affordable units. There should be nearly 8 affordable units here. No needs assessment, that's quite a serious consideration. Part of it is out in the countryside, so could potentially be deemed as being in an unsustainable location. I'd quite like to flesh out a little bit more, if I could, because Sam, I'm not entirely sure that you answered my question with regards to the the hinterland village and things. I mean, I think my second question was maybe it's a bit unfair, but the second part of my question was if this weren't a hinter, or if Woolverstone, sorry, because I know we're taking it on as whole, but if Woolverstone weren't a hinterland village, would that have a bearing upon the recommendation? Because I think this is what is absolutely key, certainly from my point of view, is the fact that that Woolverstone is designated as a hinterland village. I also have to consider what our deliberations here would mean in the event of a potential appeal if members were minded not to support this application. And I just think that would be an extremely difficult thing to justify if this committee were minded to not support the application in an appeal. Woolverstone is designated as a hinterland village, and that's really all there is to it, I think. So that's all the comments that I'll make at the moment, Chair.
Thank you. Would you like me to get the officers to comment on those comments, please? Stephen Stroud, and then Sam to follow, if I may.
More than happy to, Chair. And yeah, sorry, I'll take this off while I'm speaking. If I could actually start, Councillor Parker, just with the affordable housing point, just to make clear on that there's no express conflict with that particular policy in this instance, because the policy does envisage that there will be circumstances where viability comes into account, and so long as that case is justified, and in this case we've made use of the district valuer, then the policy is capable of being complied with in the sense that there's a case been made, it's been accepted, and quite simply it's not possible to secure the 35% that we ordinarily would seek to achieve. On the broader points, I think the bottom line is, in policy terms, within the context of the development plan, this is a hinterland village. It plays a role within its functional cluster, and that's the purpose of the spatial strategy that we've got. Notwithstanding that, I fully appreciate, and I think there are valid points made earlier by the Parish Council, that the emerging plan is taking a different direction, and of course it's an entirely different strategy. That, as a material consideration, as a document and as a process at the moment, the emerging plan, we would afford limited weight to it. But that's not to say that the importance of what's been put forward to you is immaterial, in the sense that Woolverstone has its own particular issues from a sustainability perspective. And I think then this plays into the real challenge that you've got today, members, which is that, in accordance with what the officers have told you, this is a scheme which is contrary to the development plan when viewed as a whole. And really what we're looking at here is weighing up that particular harm and any other harms, which are quite important, obviously, harm to the plan-led system, and we have an up-to-date plan, versus what the applicant is commending to you are very, very important and particularly weighty benefits. Whether you agree they are is really for your judgment, whether they're of dubious utility or they actually are of real value. That's for you to weigh up and weigh up against that harm and reach your conclusion.
Councillor Osborne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually concur with a lot of the concerns that Councillor Parker has raised. In particular, the affordable housing element, for obvious reasons. I'm just concerned that will actually set a precedent for other applications coming forward. And although I understand the financial viability, I do feel that we need to stick to policy in this particular case. I'd like to follow that up with a question, if I may. I know we're in debate, but I do have a question. If the application is approved, and there's two there for affordable housing, will the allocation be based on local connection need only, rather than Babergh-wide on the whole of Gateway choice?
Well, we don't have the benefit of our strategic housing team here to... let me take it off again. We don't have the benefit of the strategic housing team here to answer that particular question and what they'd want to secure, but I can tell you that in general terms, and what I would expect in this case, is that they would be for district needs, and as you're well aware, Councillor Osborne, I mean the council's position on affordable housing as a district is not excellent, and therefore, as a benefit, affordable housing is important, whether it's 2 units or the 8. And just to get back to that policy point, this is in compliance with the affordable housing policy because a viability case has been made and has been accepted.
Councillor Busby.
Well, you're kind of keeping on with the affordable housing thing. Of course, if they applied for 5 individual applications, there wouldn't be a requirement for any affordable housing. And I think if we think about it as on a site rather than an application, I think that probably makes more sense. I mean, having driven down around it yesterday and down Harvstad Lane, there's actually a conversion of White House Farm, which is 7 4-bedroom, huge units. We're not going to get anything out of that. No affordable housing, no benefits, whatever, I don't think. And here we are, trying to provide, they're trying to provide some houses which could fit the needs, and we're getting some benefits as well. I mean, normally when we do this calculation, and it is a tough calculation, to weigh up the benefits against the harm, the benefits normally only consist of, well, you're getting some houses. Well, I think we're getting a lot more than that in this instance. I, for one, if I was still capable of doing it, the cycle path from Chelmondiston to Holbrook, I think it's probably going to be one of the most pleasant cycle routes that you could take. It's a fantastic bit of countryside around there. One criticism I may have is that will the applicant maintain the cycle paths and the footpaths? Do they do the footpaths as well? Do they maintain the footpaths across the land at the moment? Only they're in desperate need of somebody to go around and widen them. I think you might get one person walking along them, but you certainly wouldn't get a pushchair or a mobility vehicle down there or anything like that. So providing they can be maintained at a better level than the footpaths, I think it'll be a useful addition.
Councillor McLaren.
I just correct Councillor Busby. The footpath is not it's not Chelmondiston to Holbrook. That would be a very good footpath. It's Woolverstone to Holbrook, so it's a bit shorter. I feel we're getting a bit distracted by the offer of and the development of the cycle paths. For anybody that's familiar with the Shotley Peninsula, in fact, the serious cyclists would not consider entering the peninsula and then turning right or turning left, depending which village they were in. As they enter the Shotley Peninsula, the serious cyclists have a proper route round Shotley Peninsula, and I'm all for enhancing, as a ward member, I'm all for encouraging and enhancing the cycle routes. But I think in this application, the cycle paths are a distraction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor James, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as we've stated, I mean, these don't actually fit with the development plan, and even if sites 1 to 3 are close to the built-up area boundary, I'm a bit concerned about sites 4 and 5. I mean, they're down Harvstad Lane, so they're way out in the countryside, I believe. And also it's a single-track lane, which is, so it is a bit of a concern.
Thank you. Councillor Hinton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I agree with Councillor Jameson there. I think one of the problems we've got with this application today is that it's a sort of take it or leave it application. We can't cherry pick around the 5 or 6 or 7 different elements of it. We've either got to take the whole thing together as one or reject the whole thing as one. And I think that is the major problem with it. The other thing is that it is contrary to a lot of our local plan, existing local plan, and the proposed new local plan, and to the infrastructure strategy, and to all sorts of other parts of our policy. And I can't see where the benefits are going to offset that, looking at it as a whole. I think we've got to say that it's contrary to our plans. Go away and think again. Even if you come back with 5 individual applications, then at least we can look at the merits or problems with each individual part of the application. Whereas at the moment we've got to take the whole thing as one, and far too much of it is completely contrary to our planning. And if we approve it as it stands at the moment, I'm afraid we might as well throw our local plan and everything else in the bin, because we're not going to be using it at all.
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. Anyone else? Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Chair. We've discussed housing needs survey for Woolverstone. Some of these villages are actually in Freston. Is there a housing needs survey that Freston have completed?
Yes, so site 1 is in Freston. I'm not aware that the village has actually done any sort of surveying at all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, just sharing my thoughts really. It is a difficult one. I mean, what we've seen looks very acceptable. The design, the layout, the spacing, the respect for the existing houses, and the I think sensitivity that's shown. It seems to respect the village and the identity. It's rather a difficult one for us, as they normally are. I do think the benefits, not just the cycle routes, but they do seem to provide quite an attractive package. The village hall, the benefits. I mean, there is an undeniable benefit there, and the open space. But it is a finely balanced one. I'm not really sure about the complying with policy.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Anyone else like to join the debate? If not, I need to have a proposal and a seconder on what your decision is. Councillor Busby.
Well, yeah, just taking up the one final point. I'm not saying it's only Woolverstone Parish Council, but apart from Woolverstone Parish Council, most other bodies, consultees, seem to be in favour of it or don't object to this. And it is a recommendation from our officer that we accept it. And I guess on balance, therefore, I'll be prepared to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Do you have a seconder?
Got it right in a minute. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I again looked at it from both sides, and I think we should go with the officer's recommendation, and I would propose that I second that motion.
You're seconding Councillor Busby's motion? Yes. Right. We have a motion. Unless there's any more comments, we will go to a vote. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Chair. I've just updated the recommendation in modern.gov just to read as follows so that all members are aware, because of the update from Sam's table papers, so that it includes that. So it now reads that application DC 20-03247 be approved as detailed in the updated officer recommendation in the table papers. Is that correct, Sam, as well? Just to double check.
Yeah, that's correct. And just to make it clear, the thing that has changed is on the section 106, the cycleways would be protected, and also the highways improvements included on a section 106 legal agreement.
Oh. You happy for me to proceed, Chair?
I am ready to proceed. Oh, sorry. Go on, Steve.
Apologies. It was just to clarify that, obviously, bearing in mind one of the questions that was put to the agent and the response. I don't know whether in your deliberations, proposer and seconder, that as you were weighing up the benefits as material considerations here, that you were weighing in that commitment for these dwellings to be of a particularly high standard in efficiency and sustainability terms. And if that were the case, I think it would be prudent for us to secure that by way of condition.
Yes, I agree.
Sorry. I'll turn my head away, you can't hear me. Yes, the proposer and the secretary are both willing to accept them.
Right, so with that in mind, Chair, so I will update to say, and with the additional condition as read out by the Strategic Planning and Delivery legal, which is what Mr. Stroud has just read out, if that's acceptable. Thank you.
So, Chair, can I just ask, I presume a lot of the quality statements that we've heard are wrapped up in your list of conditions, are they?
Yes, some of them are, but if the sustainability one, we could have that as a separate condition added to the decision notice if members vote to approve the scheme.
Because obviously, I think having seen, this is a full planning application, and having seen the detailed design, etc., and the fact that it does supposed to marry in with Woolverstone's character, we wouldn't want any opportunity for that to be moved away from.
No, that's absolutely right, and I know that the agent is very keen that the houses are built as he has designed them. So, you know, he takes quite a lot of pride in what he designs. So, yes, we do have detailed drawings, and I believe, just double check. Yeah, so for example, samples of brickwork, external materials, rainwater goods, details of windows and doors, eaves and verges. The heritage officer has actually required that condition to agree those details is actually included, and that is in the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Do I take it now that you're not going to change your proposal? And your second is not going to change anything? Therefore, can I now go and ask the Governance Officer to begin the vote?
Thank you, Chair. So that's now updated with the additional condition as read out by the Strategic Projects and Delivery Manager. So I'll now open the vote, Chair. If members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to the plus sign in the top right-hand corner of today's agenda. Go to the subsection on attendance/voting. From there, you will see in progress the vote in a light blue colour. It's right at the bottom, so you may need to scroll down. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, and the outcome of the vote is 7 votes for and 3 against. So the motion is carried.
Thank you, everyone. That's the motion carried. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the 16th of June. Same place as here. Thank you, everyone.